Good day, everybody. It's the 1st of October 2025, and it's a couple of minutes after 11 in the morning. And I am near Partizanski Platz. Near, not there, but just in the area. A clinic, I'm waiting for somebody there. Anyhow, as far as what's going on in the news, first let me answer a question. Somebody wrote to me, and they live in Belarus, and they were asking if I think that there would be a war coming here. Maybe in the near future, I don't know, but I don't think it will happen in the near future. And it's not that some people really want a war here very badly. Like obviously Zelensky, he really wants a war. He wants, of course, other people to be fighting the war. Of course, he doesn't mind that Ukraine is fighting the war. He's getting filthy rich, as you all know, and that is, of course, his main objective, is to get rich. And there are a lot of people, of course, that want power and wealth and power. Oftentimes they're different sides of the same coin, and you know, I don't know, some people have these strange motivations, and most people, they're out for themselves, of course, a lot of these leaders, and I guess that's the type of person that gravitates to those positions. Ursula von der Leyen, for the most part, even Donald Trump in his own way. Donald Trump, as I have said, he is obviously, his drug is success. He wants to be a big success. I don't know if he was born. It's not like a, what do they call that? A short man complex or something like Napoleon or whatever, wanting to be big and powerful. You know, Donald Trump has some sort of a deal. He wants success. And of course, obviously, what indicates success most of the time is a lot of money. So he's already gotten that far. And now he's trying to get his peace prize any way he possibly can, even without peace. And there's a lot of questions about that. Did he bring any peace or anything? I don't think so. But anyway, now he's claiming that he brought peace to Palestine and Israel. You know, it's not even quite complete yet, but based on his conditions, it should be complete. Because he is saying that if Hamas does not go for this, as you know, there's a lot of the Arabic countries, Saudi Arabia and Egypt included, and European countries, and of course, to the small extent, Israel, you know, they're all in favor of this. And Hamas has not, as far as I know, have not given their complete consent to this Donald Trump peace plan. And of course, it's not really anything different. It's basically that Palestine loses and loses and loses more. And the only thing that's really positive in that peace plan is that it's not even going to be obeyed by Israel, as anybody knows, but it's supposed to be where there's no more annexation, that Gaza stays completely Gaza, and that no more annexations in the West Bank. And as you know, it's not going to be very long, and Netanyahu or Satanyahu is going to say, oh, there's been a violation, so now we don't have to comply with this. That's going to probably, I don't know, how long do you think it'll last? Maybe a month, maybe 2 months or so. Then he's going to start saying those things. Netanyahu doesn't obey anything. He does what he wants to do, whenever he wants to do it, with whomever he wants to do it to. And Donald Trump, as everybody says, and it's pretty obvious, is just a pawn in Netanyahu's hands. You know, Netanyahu is people talk about power, and you know, and they talk about world power. What was this? You know, superpowers and whatever, and Israel is obviously the superpower of influence, because they basically control the United States. They've always controlled the United States. It's just much more so now that Donald Trump. Why is there always some kind of noise going on wherever I'm at? Somebody doing something on their balcony. It looks like he's doing something inside. He's going inside now, probably cutting wood or who knows what, drilling holes. Anyway, doesn't look like it's going to be too bad. So anyway, that's going to be a lost cause there. So this is basically a complete waste of time. And mark my words, and you'll see that. You'll see that in, who knows, maybe in 1 month, maybe in 3 months. And on paper, they lose everything. Hamas is going to have to go for it. What did Donald Trump say? If Hamas does not sign, then he will let Netanyahu finish the job. So in other words, you know, what's the alternative? And it doesn't change anything anyway. Oh man, it's just terrible. But anyway, there's some things in there that says that they, what, rebuilding, you know, people that have no money are supposed to rebuild Gaza. It doesn't make any sense anyway. Do you think Israel is going to do that? With the money it gets from the United States, do you think they're going to put it into? And they actually might build some things. I don't even doubt it. I don't even doubt it at all. Something to say, see what we did. See how much we care about you guys, and you guys are the bad guys. Anyway, it's going to probably be the United Arab Emirates and those sort of people that are supposed to front most of the money and do all, I don't know. Just forget it. Forget that peace plan crap anyhow. So, the U.S. government is officially shut down. You know, basically they have no money, so are they going to be building Gaza? I don't think so. So, and the European doesn't have any, they don't have any money. They don't even have any money to build the big, huge, massive war machine that they are going to go against Russia on, that evil Russians that are going to attack us at any day now. And they're sending drones. I mean, all that, the whole world. I mean, but what is it, a bullshit world now? It's you'd have to be an American idiot. Oh, man. Anyhow, what else is going on? A big earthquake in the Philippines. You all heard about that. A lot of people dead. Really massive. It was like 6.9 on the Richter scale. People going across a bridge, they had to stop and like lay down their motorcycles and, you know, and sit down somewhere because you can't even stand. It was so rough. It was terrible. I don't even know what destruction of that has brought. I think that was in the last night. That's really terrible. Yes, and Russia, they hit Kharkiv quite a bit, I guess, last night. Military targets after, of course, something that's rarely even ever reported because it happens every single night, every day. Ukraine was shelling parts of Belgorod. Jeez. And so that was, I guess, in return for that. How many people died in that? I don't know. Anyway, Russia hits the military targets, and lots of misinformation and malinformation, everything going on. I hear even over here people are getting BS'd. And Donald Trump with his paper tiger comment, I guess he repeated that. Well, I'll get to that. I keep jumping ahead of myself here. Let me just go what I'm doing right now. Okay. A few days ago also, China, they completed the highest bridge in the world called the Huaijing Grand Canyon Bridge. It's 625 meters high. And China also has the longest bridge. I think that was completed in 2011. It is called the Danyang Kunsha. And it's not all over water, of course. It goes through little bits of island and all that. It's just a huge, huge connecting way, and it is actually a bridge, of course, but it's not over water alone or over a huge gap alone necessarily. It's mostly connecting a lot of areas so that you have much faster travel in between certain areas. I'm not even sure which areas that was. I don't know if that was the one that was Beijing and Shanghai or something. I don't know. Okay, but it's 102 miles long, or 165 kilometers. It also took 4 years to build, and this big tall bridge, it took also nearly 4 years to make. And the Golden Gate Bridge apparently took 5 years to plan and 4 years to build. And this Kerch Bridge in Crimea, that took slightly over 3.5 years to build that. That includes planning and building, and it has a rail line. So, you know what the moral of all of this is very strangely enough, the United States cannot build this stuff anymore. Donald Trump has even acknowledged that, and he wants to bring a lot of engineers, even for infrastructure, into the United States from foreign countries, because the United States has lost this ability to be doing these sort of things. I remember, and I've probably said this maybe twice, at least once I said this. I remember back in I'm thinking this was maybe the early 80s at the very latest. Maybe it was even in the 70s. And I was in a car with an engineer from Boeing, a pretty high engineer, and he was talking, and he was telling about this thing like that records. Remember records that you listen to music on? He said that they will be obsolete one day. And it's like, really? Is that true? And he said yes. And I was thinking of cassette tapes. I think they had cassette tapes by that time. And I thought, oh, everybody's going to use the cassettes. And you know, remember 8-track tapes? I don't know. I think they were even, maybe they were around. But what he was talking about is that there will be a device with a laser beam, and it shines upon some sort of a smaller disc, and the music is read by the laser beam. And you know, of course, he was talking about CDs. So that was really incredible. I'm thinking that was maybe around 1980 that I heard that, and that was, you know, big news back in those days. So, you know, a lot of things that are going on are just a lot of technology. Like Russia has now crystals, and they can put data, music or anything on these crystals, and it holds a lot. And I guess it can last way over 100 years. And so these are supposed to be some incredible things. That's just for music and all that. And now Russia is coming out apparently with a plasma engine. And I'm not sure how long that is going to take before it is actually complete, but it looks like it will be in the works, or will be completed. And this plasma engine is supposed to be an engine that can propel rocket ships and things all the way to Mars and back again, and all that. Along with that, I was reading something, and I think it was even from agreed by Musk, or maybe Elon Musk is the one that said that. And they were talking about like these Apollo moon landings. What was it, Apollo 11? Or I think that was back in 1969. But he said, even based on some of the technology today, that you would have to refuel multiple times before you would reach the moon. And back in those days, it would have been even much more. And I think somebody was saying that, I mean, even with the most advanced rockets and everything, that they would have to have refueled 3 times on the way to the moon. And that doesn't even tell you about the trip back, which is very strange. So, you know, and I was thinking, and you hear a lot of these people saying, well, that's BS. The U.S. went to the moon, you know, and people, I've heard this from people that have given me like certain advice and things like that, and it turns out that they were wrong, and they had given themselves bad advice. You know, I mean, they come up with some things, and you know, they're rich. They have a lot of money. They're multimillionaires. And so I guess we have a tendency to believe, you know, this person's very rich, so they must be smarter than me. They must be smarter than most all of us. So what they say has more weight than what poor people say. And I'll tell you what, when I lived in the Caribbean, I was listening to some Rasta guy. He had no electricity. He didn't have a radio even, I don't think. Maybe they used radios with batteries, because some of them do, I know, because I lived there, as I know. But this guy, no television, nothing like that. And he was actually more accurate on talking about, you know, food shortages in the future and things, or at certain times in certain places and certain items. And it's just really strange that these people that are not fed this information that comes across the media, you know, like being an American idiot, you know, like the song, that somehow these guys add a little bit more common sense, I guess, than the rest of us. It's just a side note anyway. I'm talking about technology, and you know, Russia's coming out with obviously, and it's already in trials, clinical trials. It's already working, that they can cure cancer with some certain things. And there are even plants that definitely, beyond any shadow of a doubt, do cure types of cancer. Because I have seen these plants, I have grown these plants. As a matter of fact, I actually grow them here. I'll show you them one day when I'm, hopefully in the near future, when I start showing you videos inside of my apartment and all that. But I've known people, and these are even people that do have a lot of money, and they had cancer and they were dying, and basically they were saying goodbye, and they said they only had some, I don't know, less than half a year to live. And then they tried everything. They went to different doctors all over, and they tried different medications and chemotherapy and all that sort of thing, and none of it actually worked. And they were down to like, I think I've mentioned this, of course, I remember saying this, that they were down to like a pill, and each pill cost $400 US. And they said, well, I can't be doing this. I don't know how many pills a day, or if it's just one a day, but $400 a day, you know, even for somebody that does have a lot of money, that's kind of steep when you think about it. And there's no guarantee it would work. So this person tried some kind of a natural medicine, and I'll have more information on that, you know, in the future, because a lot of research and doctors even in Asia were saying that this actually does work for many types. I think even 11 types of cancers, and it will ward off the cancer, and it will eliminate the cancer, and it will cure you from cancer. And I saw this guy one time, and he was, very nice, and he was dying. He was dying, he said. He was still working and all and farming. He was a farmer, and from a prominent family in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as a matter of fact, his daughter, I believe, is the assistant ambassador to the United States. But anyhow, this guy, he tried this natural medicine from tea leaves, a certain type of plant, and he used the tea leaves. And that when I saw him at maybe a year or two later, and I think I was asking him about it, I said, how is your cancer problem doing? He said, it's gone. And he said it took about 3 months. He said, I think after 1 month or whatever, 6 weeks, he went back to his doctor, and his cancer, I don't know what that word is anymore, receding or something. It was getting weaker. And I think within a month or two after that, or 2 months, it was completely gone. He has no cancer anymore, free of cancer. That's incredible. And he knows lots of other people that have also used that plant, and their cancer is gone. So, and it's like, you hear a lot of stuff about noni, the noni fruit, that this does this and this does that. Turmeric also for cancer and things like that. I don't know, and some people swear by that. I don't know, I really don't know, but I've known that this one does work. And then the country there, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there is a ban on exporting even the leaves from the country. It actually produces a fruit too. It's called soursop, by the way. Soursop, that's the common word for that. I don't know that, the botanical name is the one that's more appropriate. I think in Spanish it's guanabana is what it's called. And but anyway, I took some seeds and I grow them in my apartment, and with this cold weather, some of the plants have died, and I've been growing them. I started germinating the seeds back in 2022, early 2022. So I've had the plants for that long, and they're like I don't know, 18 inches high or something. They should be much bigger if it was a tropical environment. But unfortunately, what they do here is like for instance right now, the heat is not even turned on. They have centralized heating in Belarus, and it comes from, like I've shown you, these plants. Some would look like nuclear power plants or whatever like that, and you've got to shut this stuff on. And I guess there's some sort of a policy that when the temperature goes below some certain point for a certain amount of days, then they turn the heat on, and of course it's gone on for all winter then, and all that sort of stuff. And but anyway, it's not on yet. And when your body is acclimatized maybe slowly from the weather getting colder, you don't realize how cold it is yourself, and then you're airing out your apartment maybe a little bit with your windows open. And my plants suffered for that. So I lost two, and there's a couple that are barely hanging on. A lot of the leaves have already dropped off of them, and one of them was my very, very best plant. It was, look at the leaves are kind of curling and the drooping and all this. And anyway, we have a heater, so I decided, well, that must be what it is. I was not sure what was making my plants suffer. And virtually all of them were. One window was better than the other window from the other side of the house, where lots of leaves were dropping off. And so I moved them. I just realized, hey, that's a little bit colder on that side. That's where I'll be maybe making my future videos from, is a colder side. So anyway, but it's, even when the heat is on, it's a little bit colder. But so I switched them to the other side, and then occasionally I'm turning a heater on, and things are looking better. So anyway, you needed to hear all that or not. Let me keep going back into the news. I was talking about these bridges, and it's just amazing. Chinese engineering is really putting American engineering to shame. And Donald Trump apparently is a little bit desperate. He's starting to try to get a lot of people to go to the United States to bring life back into it. And of course, he still believes that the U.S. military, automatically after 6 months of Donald Trump, it's now the most powerful, the biggest, most ready, and all that blah 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 military on the planet, and they've got the most deadly weapons, and he's again, well, it's I'll get to that. He had that meeting. He was talking in that meeting that that he had with Hegseth, and that the deadliest weapon on the world is this American submarine. Russian has some very formidable ones, and as you know, Donald Trump, you never know how good something is, because everything that he has, everything he touches, everything he sees, everything in his domain is bigger and better than everybody else's, so you don't know what the real truth is. So anyhow, let's see. As usual, these days there's so much other ominous news coming out. Ansar Allah, the Houthi, they are again targeting, they said they're going to start targeting American ships again that are going to Israel, and bringing who knows what, probably also bombs and things, obviously bombs. They definitely are bringing bombs and ammunition to Israel, and that's probably the main reason why they're going to be again targeting U.S. shipping going to Israel. And even before this, the United States is building up a lot of forces in the Middle East again. It's reminiscent of the recent attacks on Iran. So they sent 4 air, I guess you'd call them air-to-air or in-air or whatever, air tankers, 6 of them again to the Middle East, refueling tankers for planes in the air, just the same as what they did then. And it's really weird. The U.S. is threatening Venezuela. They got, I guess now it's, I think, over 6,500 troops. They're like, what is that, like 6 battalions or so down there? I don't know if they're Marines or what they are. I don't know if those are just the combat troops or those are troops in general. And of course they've admitted to 10 ships, but there are actually more ships down there. There are Coast Guard ships. I even lived on an island where there's American Coast Guard base there, and they were sending drones over Venezuela even back then, back in 2021. I don't think that base was built in 2020. It's around Donald Trump time anyway. And of course they made that country pay for the base, building it. I don't know what the U.S. contributed to that, but when you're a big bully, you can make everybody do anything you want to do. So, but anyway, all this stuff is arriving in the area in the U.S. There's more U.S. forces and things getting ready there. I guess weapons mostly, and more getting ready for the bombing raids. Right after that, they can start going after the Ansar Allah again. And the whole thing, everything, the entire Middle East, the turmoil. If Donald Trump wants to stop all this, just stop giving weapons to Israel. Everybody knows that. As a matter of fact, they should not have even created Israel. They allowed it. It was the British mostly that did that. And anyway, that's another story. So somebody else can go into that. But it's anyway. Right now, the relationship between Israel and the U.S. is very much like I always say, Guardians of the Galaxy. Remember Groot? I'm Groot. And Rocket, that little raccoon. Israel is the little raccoon that and Groot is his muscle. So everybody knows Donald Trump is almost totally, completely subservient to Benjamin Netanyahu. Makes you wonder what goods they have on him. People walk in there and they just stop. Maybe they see me sitting here. They think I'm filming. Well, let's see, I'll show you. Well, no, you can't. I don't have that camera on. Doesn't matter. Okay. Okay, old Stub. Or Stubbs. Whatever. Stubby. I don't know. That guy from Finland, the leader of Finland, he said that Finland will not shoot down Russian planes if they stray into Finnish airspace. Isn't that incredible that there is some logical thinking? Russia doesn't do that. They don't shoot everybody's planes down that strays a little bit into Russian territory, So why should anybody do that to them? And, of course, they got all these lies coming out. I think Stubb is maybe a little bit more intelligent and sees that they share a long border with Russia, and there could be some flack that comes back from Russia if they actually do that. It's not like it was very nice when Turkey shot down that Sukhoi that strayed into Turkish territory, from Syria back then, and basically Erdogan went back to Russia on his knees and begged, "Oh, I'm sorry." So we'll see what happens. That's going to be really something. Other big news. This is really big news, and it really is important. It really is. It is this big, massive cheating that Moldova was doing. Maya Sandu. That's incredible. That's incredible cheating. And I already talked a lot about that. They were blocking the bridges and blocking the Transnistrians from voting. And as a matter of fact, I think there was two sites or two polling places in Russia for the expats there, the diaspora, to vote in all of Russia too. And I think I made a mistake. I said 1 million. I think there's 700,000 Moldovans, and I think there might even be more there than there is in Europe. But anyhow, they have two sites, two polls, and one of them was closed the entire time. I think it was the biggest one in Moscow. So they made sure that none of those people could vote. The Moldovans, the diaspora, because they know they would vote for the opposition. Wow. And not the pro-EU anti-Russia party. And of course they blocked the Transnistrians, most all of them, from voting as well. I don't know what they did with Gagazia. You know, of course they have that later in jail, which most of those people are pro-Russia. I think they let that vote go through, and it's a smaller place, so that even though the vast majority, I think 90% are practically voted for the opposition, and maybe it was even more than that. I think that one actually went. So, but the other places, they cheated all over the place. You know, it's really, really sad, and that's called democracy, I suppose. And let's see, what about circumvent Hungary to get? And I guess the EU they're pretty sure they have a plan to circumvent Hungary from blocking this vote that will allow Moldova and Ukraine into the European Union. And of course, all the other countries, they had to go through much more stringent criteria to join the European Union, but they're basically, Ukraine and Moldova are getting pulled into the European Union. You can forget democracy and justice and all that. That doesn't matter anymore. Really terrible. Alexander Dugin, Daria Dugina's father, was talking about how it's really bad. And even with all of this cheating, the pro-EU anti-Russia party, they barely won. They barely won, like 1%. Even with all that cheating, they're so disliked, you know. Incredible. And Mia Sandow, she said that if she didn't win, in which, strangely enough, she barely won, if she didn't win, she would nullify the election, you know, cancel the election. It's just like what they did in Romania. When the pro-EU party did not win, I don't know if there was one or two. Anyway, when they didn't win, they canceled the election. The election was canceled. It's like, again, democracy in action, as you all know. That's how that goes, baby. Wow. So, what else? Pavel Durev, the one who owns Telegram, you know, and he is basically stuck in France, as you know. I think he has to report every weekend or something like that. I can't even remember what that's all about. But anyhow, but he's not pussying over. He came out and he said that the you know, operatives in the French government, they came to him and they were actually asking him then to block and censor the opposition of Moldova on Telegram, and he refused to do that. But part of this is what they said, that he would be taking his orders from Mia Sandow on how to censor them. Wow, incredible! It's absolutely unbelievable. Wow. So anyway, it was massive cheating, massive cheating. There's so much massive cheating, and as I told you guys, and I should say it again and remind you, there is massive protests and things going on in Serbia. There's protests going on in Slovakia. They are really trying to take over the hate Russia people. It's just unbelievable, you know. So you have a very strong hate Russia operatives working all over in Europe. I'm kind of glad that I don't see really any of that. Well, that is going on in Belarus, and I've actually told you about that. But it's a really covert. It's you know, through students and teachers and things like that. And of course there are operatives here. And as I said, somebody was asking me, you know, if I think, oh, there's a kitty over there. Somebody's trying to feed a cat. If I think that there's going to be a war in Belarus, but it's not at the moment, you know. And I think Lukashenko, in so many ways, is a model to be looked at by a lot of countries. And you know, he's been there for quite some time. You know, some people say that's why we have to get rid of him, but if he's doing a good job, you know. Anyway, oh, I should also add that Maya Sandu, she even banned one opposition party on the day of the election, which is incredible. And of course some are jailed and banned and all kinds of stuff. Absolutely. Yeah, and as the election was going, the opposition was actually more than 1% ahead until like a lot of these diaspora votes came in, and of course, as I said, a lot of them were blocked in the pro-Russian side, and the others came through from the EU, and that gave her 1% victory, I suppose. Wow, it's kind of like that Joe Biden vote, remember, where Biden and Trump. It was the first election there. And Trump was way ahead. If you went to bed at 11 o'clock at night, you could be rest assured that Trump was going to win. And then you woke up in the morning, you know, somehow at 4 o'clock in the morning, Joe Biden just shot way ahead of Donald Trump and won the election, and all of the crazy stuff that was going on. But I don't know. I think you can even talk about election meddling on YouTube now. You know, I don't know if a lot of this stuff will ever be true, but I mean, be proven, but yeah, just really incredible stuff. That's all I have to say, including big truckloads filled with votes pulling up to the polling station pulling up to where the votes were counted, even long after the votes were done. And in the EU election, this one here in Moldova, when the polls opened up, I mentioned this already before, that the people that went in to vote, they noticed that the ballot boxes were already pretty much full before the polls were even open. So make sure, well, who voted? You know, it's incredible. And that was in Moldova. So that was to help Mia Sandu. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So anyway, so Trump and Hegseth, this meeting of all these top generals and admirals, my take on this, and it was even said during this thing that they are, Hegseth was even saying this, that they are preparing for war. You know, if you want peace, you prepare for war. But you know, the one part that should be emphasized is the fact is prepare for war. And you know, it's not saying that there will be a war necessarily, but but you have to really look at what's going on. I don't think the United States would ever send troops to Iran. It's way too far away. Venezuela, absolutely, yes. Venezuela is not so far. I mean, not as far as Iran, and they have a lot of resources. And of course, as you know, and I've said on this channel, and of course it's repeated very often by Vladimir Putin, and it's put out by Lavrov, is Russia, if they go to war, it is for people. If the United States goes to war, it is for resources. It's, in other words, for money, baby. And Russia tries to save people. And wow, and that's absolutely true. And that's exactly what all this is about in the Crimea War. I mean, in the war in Donbass and all that down there. These are ethnically Russian people. So, and a lot of their rights were taken away. Their language was supposed to be taken away. Their culture was supposed to be taken away. Their history and everything else. Anyway, I've gone into that. That's big topics anyway. So get ready for war is what that was all about. And they're even telling the fat generals and things that they got to lose weight. And somebody put out this video, and I saw this, and it said it was to fire all the generals. And I mean, it was a little bit of stuff, and a lot of it is in part true. It's that it will change the U.S. as we know it. But you know, there's nothing wrong with you know, trying to, you know, make the military more ready. And it's whether what you're going to use the military for is another thing. And it's now called the Department of War, not defense. It's not defense anymore. I don't know, some really strange things that look really strange. Donald Trump has how much more? He's got like 3.5 years to go. I don't know. If they go to war, I don't know. Is it going to be against Venezuela? If not Venezuela, well, who? I don't think it's going to be Russia or Iran. So, but he wants to threaten everybody. Obviously, he's threatening India. Everybody gets threatened. You do what I tell you to, or else. Just like what he said with Hamas. I already just now put that on. If you do not do what we want you to do, we're going to send Netanyahu after you. Satan Yahoo, who knows no laws and no rules and has no morals. Wow. Everybody knows Satan Yahoo. That's a more proper name for that guy, obviously. Anybody who cares about life will admit to that too. So, but anyway, we're already in a war, and I already made a video like that, and it's like a hybrid war. But this hybrid war, and of course Donald Trump is waging this war as well, and of course one of the main targets is obviously, as usual, as it's off and on for the most part always been, Russia. If you go back hundreds of years, it was a little bit of a delay there when it was Adolf from Germany there. But right back to Russia again. As a matter of fact, General Patton, I used to live when I was in the military in Heidelberg. I lived in Patton Barracks, by the way. And I believe what killed him was a truck, and it happened to have been, I believe, from the unit that I was a part of, but of course much earlier. That's just what I've heard when I was over there. He was run over by an army truck, and he wanted to march all the way to Russia. So that was the point I was trying to say. Yeah, but anyway, part of this war is not is physical. It is a physical, and of course these generals were told anyway, for their physicals, either you comply or go, and if you don't want to, just leave the room. None of them, of course, left the room. Donald Trump, of course, buttered them up a lot. And a lot of them, it makes you wonder if there's still some woke generals in there. You got Milley and all this kind of crazy people in there. But it's, anyway, but this war that is going on now in the world, it's partly is physical with weapons, as you know. You see this in Ukraine, and you see this in the Middle East with Israel. And, of course, another big weapon is the media and propaganda weapons. That might include AI, by the way. And then there's Donald Trump, what do you call his? It's also partly media. He has these head fakes. He makes these threats, and then he goes the other direction. He says one thing and he says the other. He was even contradicting himself in that meeting, I guess, with these generals. Anyway, he uses the media big time. And then you have the intelligence part. You have the Mossad and the CIA and the MI6. And of course, there are a lot of other agencies too. The U.S. has 16 altogether. I've even met some of them, believe it or not. I've met some of the top ones back in the old days. What are some of the names? One starts with a D. I keep wanting to say Darfur or something like that. Anyway, I might remember those. And I took some on tour, believe it or not. And they were super, super nice people, believe it or not. But anyway, of course, what is the other one? What's the one who is the guy with the glasses and the red beard and all that? Oh, gosh, I'm even forgetting all this stuff. NSA, that was another one. I've met people even that worked kind of for them, but that was before they were anything that anybody knew about them being dangerous, so that was time ago. Okay, let's see. Zelensky now that, as he says, that Trump trusts him and not Putin, he is saying that Russia is bombing and attacking their own nuclear power plant, the Zaporozhye power plant. And of course the Russians have been saying that they get approximately 10 attacks a day, with drones, and approximately. But anyway, I don't know what's going on lately. Maybe because they put that out lately, that Zelensky is trying to make everybody think that the Russians are attacking their own, and you would think that they would be putting out even more information and, saying, oh, again, Zelensky did this. I don't know. Zelensky is I don't know, maybe he's getting a little bit too confident now that thinking he's moving into Netanyahu territory and controlling Trump. But I don't know. He's never going to compete with Netanyahu in controlling Donald Trump. And a lot of people, as you know, you can get a lot of control, but not complete control over Donald Trump by just flattering him. You just flatter him and telling how great he is. That's one thing that Putin, he only did that at the very beginning, and then Trump for a little while was in love with Vladimir Putin. If you remember that when Trump said he's a great businessman, or Putin said Trump is a great businessman, and then, yeah, we can be friends with Russia and all that. And of course, Putin is not really out for lying so much. So, he basically tells the truth. And the other ones, like somebody calls him daddy, and, that Trump is so great, like Netanyahu and all. And I guess flattery will get you everywhere, as that expression goes. So what else? I don't know. They say that Trump, they were even saying that, no, Putin blew up their own pipeline, Nord Streams, yeah. And it's another thing. By way of deception, thou shalt do war. Gosh dang. Anyway. Also, Zelensky says he expects to get as a minimum $1 billion a month worth of weapons. $1 billion per month in weapons. And as you know, there was an IMF loan. I think Ukraine was asking for $38 billion, and the IMF basically said, well, why, we'll give you $58 billion. I don't know what was I don't think, was it 30? Anyway, it's $58 billion or so. Wow. And of course, a lot of that is going to go into military and intelligence and things like that. Absolutely incredible. It's going to pay all the bills. I mean, guess what? You don't even have to work in Ukraine, theoretically. You just sit back and wait for some money. I think I tell you what, where can I move there? Get some money and, get a fake passport. Acts like I'm Ukrainian. Jeez. Yeah. Yes, Trump has offered his Gaza plan, like I already said. I already talked about that. Did I mention that a lot of those things were amendments by Israel? What are the amendments? I didn't mention that, did I? I said Israel offered amendments. Of course, Hamas or Palestinians don't get amendments, but one of the amendments was, and I don't know, if this was after everybody said they approved of it, maybe then Israel came back later and pushed this amendment, which was there will be no Palestinian state. So, which is one of the main things right there. Looks like this is a really nice lady, a young, very attractive girl. Too bad you guys can't see her. This blonde lady over there. She's feeding a black cat, trying to make friends with it. Cat is staying back. Wow, real nice. Anyway, I should have. But anyway, she's hunched down, kind of under a tree. Very nice. Anyway, no Palestinian state. And of course, Israel is not going to comply with this no annexations. It's at some point in time that was going to change. Israel is going to renege on whatever they signed there. It's a waste of time. Israel does what they want to do when they want. Like I said, this is going to be incredible, and we're going to all be watching this. Oh, well, we can't honor the agreement now because Hamas did this or whatever, even though it's going to probably be Israel that does something, or nothing will have ever happened, and they'll just say that something. It's terrible. It's really terrible. The flotilla, by the way, it was attacked last night in a way. I don't know if there was any explosions or bombs or any shooting, anything like that, but a whole bunch of drones. They said at least 20 drones were buzzing them last night all over. And I guess they're entering within the 120 kilometer zone, I guess, that marks Israel, Gaza, and all that sort of thing. Of course, they're going to Gaza. They're not going to Israel. And of course, Israel operates as if they own those waters anyway. And it's up to them in the United States. They already do. And of course, as you know, there was a natural gas, a big field of natural gas found under there. And of course, Israel went over there and they sucked that all right. They already took possession of that, even if it's off the coast of Gaza and not Israel. I don't know. There might be some even off the coast of Israel. But anyway, Israel is controlling that, taking out that gas. Okay. But these drones came and then they left. So it was really maybe just as a scare tactic. Who knows? Okay. Okay, at present, you know, they closed the borders of Belarus for a while and it's opened again, you know, completely. No traffic of anything goes through from Belarus to Poland. And it turns out that 90% of China's EU trade goes by rail through there. There was, I think it was 800 and some trucks and huge amounts of, you know, train. It was all stuck, you know, going deep into Belarus, you know, because they couldn't get across the border because it was closed. And 90% of the trade that goes to the European Union from China is through that railway from Belarus through Poland. And 10% goes through other ways. And of course, a lot of this was probably rerouted, and they took it through. I think there are 4 rail, what do you call them, bridges or rail routes from China, fully going into the European Union. One through Turkey. There's one through Kazakhstan, and I don't know. But anyhow, they probably a lot of that was rerouted. So what this closure signified and told the Chinese is they're looking even much more. Of course, it turns out to be negative for the European Union. So now they're looking a little bit more closely at this Arctic route that goes from, it will go from Chengdu to Hamburg. And it's 18 days, but it's the Arctic route. And of course, Russia is using icebreakers. They're building more icebreakers. I think the US has only 1 icebreaker, and Russia even has nuclear-powered icebreakers. So anyhow, this looks like a more viable route, and a lot of people are looking at it, not just the Chinese, other people are as well. So it's going to be interesting. Tell you what, if you go through the Arctic, you don't even have to turn your refrigeration on, I guess, with some of your frozen goods or whatever. So, okay, lately, as you know, Trump called Russia a paper tiger. Apparently, somehow he gave some message and said he wouldn't do that again, and then he did do it again. He did it again with this meeting with Hegseth and these top generals and admirals. And he says basically he was saying that Russia should have defeated Ukraine in 1 week. And, you know, well, it makes you wonder, well, how long was the United States in Afghanistan, which doesn't have any Air Force whatsoever, no Navy whatsoever, no tanks whatsoever? All they have is a bunch of guys wearing rags and shooting AK-47s, and yet the United States couldn't conquer them. So how long were they there? It was the longest war in American history. So what about that? And another thing is, well, I'll tell you what, if Russia waged war like the United States wages war, Russia could have got that done. They could have got it done in a week, for certain, definitely. As you know, the United States, and I was in the military even in those days, you know, during the Iraq war and all that. I didn't go. I mean, I didn't go to Iraq. I wasn't in Desert Storm or nothing. You know, some soldiers in my unit actually were. I mentioned that before. But anyhow, when the United States goes to war, they bomb everything. And we were even told back then, one of our policies, kind of, so to speak, is kill them all and let God sort them out. So, you know, Russia doesn't do that. Russia tries to only go after military people that are shooting at them, or military targets. And the United States virtually targets most everything. You know, if they hit schools and things like that, no big deal. It's just collateral damage. They don't really even have such words in the Russian military. They don't operate that way. And that's one reason why it takes a lot longer. And not only that, but Russia sees the Ukrainians, of course they are Eastern Slavs, they are part of their own people, just like the Belarusians. The Eastern Slavs are the Ukrainians, the Belarusians, and the Russians, and there are other Slavs as well, you know, but that is their family, that is their Slavic family, and you know, they feel that they are going to war against themselves. And a lot of the problem why they are at war is enticement by the United States in the 1950s and the it started back then, and trying to fan the flames. And you had, of course, Stefan Bandera is, of course, the chief architect of all of this stuff. But anyway, that's also another story, and you guys get a lot of that as well. To think, what is it, the ONU, whatever that kind of OAU? I even forget what that means, but anyway, Stefan Bandera, they're all brainwashed to a large extent in Ukraine, thinking that he was a loving man. He was a very loving guy. Anyway, he was after Jews, he was after Soviet people, or communists and all that sort. But strange thing is, there isn't any communists anymore. So, well, just call them Russians, and all Russians are communist. Anyway, it's a lot of crazy. I mean, it's just a revival of the Nazism, and if you really want to be honest, if you look at Adolf Hitler compared to Stefan Bandera, and the ideologies that they profess, Adolf Hitler would be Nazi light, and Stefan Bandera is Nazi hardcore. And the German Nazis were appalled at the brutality and the bloodthirst of the Ukrainian Nazis. And of course, you had Nazis even back then in the Baltic states and all that as well. And in Finland went on the side with the Nazis as well. And I don't know that they were Nazis. I know that they did have definitely Nazis in like Lithuania and those places as well. But Poland for the most part was not. But there were some switching of alliances back in those days. Originally, it was Stalin was kind of buddies with not buddies, but he admired Adolf Hitler because they were both socialists. In other words, they were both leftists. And of course, Adolf Hitler was a fascist, and like a lot of socialists, like Benito Mussolini, who was also a socialist, was a leftist. I keep trying to mention that in this. In my vlog, but they always try to say that fascism is far right, but the truth is that fascism is far left. Fascism is a leftist ideology. It's not a right ideology. So calling Donald Trump, even on those grounds, calling him a fascist makes no sense whatsoever. And if you look at the behavior of a lot of the people on the left now, the Democrats, and a lot of their trans people and all that, with assassinations and things like that, and wanting to kill and saying, to go kill ICE agents and things like that, it sounds a little bit closer to something like the Banderites and the Hitlerites professed, rather than what Donald Trump professes anyway. There's a lot of things, obviously, I don't like about Donald Trump, and I'll talk about them, and there are things that are kind of positive about him, and at the at the very least, he's frightening. He's unpredictable. Sometimes that could be a good thing, but in Donald Trump's case, it's not a good thing. And like Lukashenko said, Donald Trump says one thing in the morning, he says something different in the afternoon. He's even done that sometimes in his speeches. He did that even with this. I can't even remember what the point was he was trying to make. Well, part of that point might even be where he's talking about Russia being a paper tiger, But of course, at the beginning of this term, he would say anybody that would go to war against Russia is completely stupid, because that's their business, is war. Russia's business is war. And now he's saying they're paper tigers. But anyway, Donald Trump contradicts himself all the time. Sometimes maybe 2 sentences after he says one thing. So I think he was even implying that Medvedev is stupid. And Medvedev is a very intelligent person, by the way. Yeah. Anyway. I was talking about this doctrine, kill them all and let God sort them out. Who lives by that today? Big time. Israel. Israel certainly does. They certainly do. If there's one person that they believe is a Hamas person, they'll kill them all. Just like Donald Trump when he wanted to kill Soleimani. He killed 16 other people at the same time. Oh, no big deal, right? Yeah. Anyway, what was this meeting about? Let's just close with that. This meeting that Donald Trump and Hegseth put out, what this was certainly about, undeniably, is that the people in the military are to keep their mouths shut and do as they are told. You have virtually no freedom. You know, your property, your GI, government issue. You do what you're told. You are basically a slave. And in truth, when you join the military, to a large extent, you give up your freedom. You give up your freedom for that extended period of time. I felt that when I was in the military, and it's like, sure, there's probably ways to get out, but they're not very good, and maybe you won't be able to get a job necessarily when you get out, get a dishonorable discharge, things like that. It's just not a pretty thing. So, in truth, you are property. You are property for that time, and you are not even allowed now, as they made clear on this meeting, you're not allowed to open up your mouth. You better be in damn good shape. You better do as you are told to do. You have no input in anything. And, you know, if we tell you to kill them all and let God sort them out, you know, that is what you have to do. It is not very good. And in a lot of ways, we were told that if, in those days at least, if we were given an order and we know for a fact that it is an inhumane and an unlawful order, that then we can disobey it. And it's not, apparently they're trying to imprint on people now that that is not necessarily the case anymore. And if you do not go along with what they say, you know, they kick you out of the military. If you're an officer, you get kicked out. That's not a nice thing. But who knows what happens to you when you're enlisted? Yeah, certainly you'll be kicked out. I don't know. Some people in my unit, matter of fact, in my squad, they were my soldiers. Some went to prison, you know, for doing some nasty deeds. And one guy went to a mental ward. And in my platoon, of course, other people went to mental institutions. It's a, you know, sometimes back in those days, it was, we were on, I was stationed at Wildflecken. It was on the front lines, considered the #1 worst place in the United States Army to be stationed. They called it the Rock. And some people would commit suicide if they were sent to that duty station. It was a training area. And but anyway, some people, they just like went to mental institutions and things like that. I can tell you a lot of stories. Maybe I will in the time. You know, I'm sure, I don't know, you would think that a lot of people would have these stories too, like even Scott Ritter and Colonel McGregor. I don't know if they've ever told them. Yeah, it's interesting things. Anyhow, thank you all for joining me. It's a 1 hour again, another hour video. Thanks for joining me, and I hope it was enlightening to you, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.